My name is Professor Gatrad. I'm a consultant pediatrician at the Manor Hospital in Warsaw, and I founded WASUP, World Against Single-Use Plastic, 4 years ago. But today I'm going to talk to you about climate change and its impact on our children. I have a qualification in Planetary Health, and I'm also a member of the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. So what is threatening us and what's all the fuss about? It's all about fossil fuels. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, well over 100 years ago, the planet has heated up by 1.24 degrees centigrade. And we are seeing heat all over the world. This is in Germany this year, again, record heats as a result of these gases going up and up and up. This is carbon dioxide. The oceans are actually getting warmer. And if we carry on the way we are doing, by the end of the century, we will hit 2 to 3 degrees higher than we are now, perhaps even 5 degrees. We should be aiming for no more than 2 degrees. So what will happen if we carry on is that 420 million people will be affected if we reach 1.5 degrees. That's more than they are now. And 1.7 billion more people will be affected if the temperature goes up by 2 degrees. It is what we are doing in developed countries that's affecting 90% of nations that are actually innocent in all this. So this is the impact we are seeing in children from hurricanes, from floods, from fires, from droughts, resulting in malnutrition, conflict, migration, and its impact on children. Why do we talk about children? Well, 20% of today's children will be 100% of adults soon. They are innocent in all this. And presently they form 2.35 billion of the population in the world. 50% of the world's population is less than 30 years old. And the health burden of climate change is falling already on 88% of those that are less than 5 years old. And if we just consider the developing nations, it's 99% of children below the age of 5 years that are affected by climate change. Why are they more vulnerable, children, that is? Because they've got lifelong exposure to anything they're exposed to. They have an immature system of fighting infection. And all these things here are the way the metabolic systems works in children, which makes them more vulnerable to climate change and its impacts. Children need protection from every sector, and we know this. For example, from transport, we've got laws in this country protecting children, and here children are on a bus. Agricultural policies affect children worldwide. Urban planning makes sure that there is enough space for children to play in, green spaces I'm talking about. The environment causes gases, and that impacts on children's health. We use family services in this country, of which there are none in many others, and we protect our children from abuse. Houses are bad anyway, but they get worse through the impact of climate change. And again, education gets seriously impacted. So now, in addition to all these factors that I've talked about, planetary health is multiplying that threat. So planetary health basically is the impact on human health and animals caused by us through disrupting Earth's natural systems, that is, the resources we're talking about, which is soil, air, water, etc. And we are going through a geological period called the Anthropocene, whereby it is basically excess use of energy that is changing our climate and impacting on our planet. All this leads to global warming, which is made worse by expansion of population, industrialization, and also deforestation. Now, this is an interesting factor, which is again related to climate change and planetary health. The pandemics are forecasted to be worse because animals and humans are coming closer to each other, particularly as a result of fires, floods, and particularly deforestation. This All this results in starvation, and starvation leads to man eating animals that are not usually eaten, such as monkeys and crocodiles. And these carry viruses, which, when they're passed on to humans, cause pandemics, such as the one we had in North Africa with Ebola, and the one from China, which came through bats, which is COVID. Planetary health has 9 boundaries. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about climate change, but very briefly, the impact on biodiversity, for example, bee population has fallen by 30% over the last 20 years, and that impacts on our crop pollination, and obviously then that results in decrease in yield of food. Frogs have died of particular species, which get rid of mosquitoes, for example. Land systems are changing because of monocropping, the soil degradation, resulting in less carbon capture. Water is getting infected and of poor quality, particularly through glaciers around the world melting, and eutrophication, which is basically algae that grow in water, and also cyanobacteria, which affect marine life. The herbicides and the pesticides that we use affect not only the quality of our crops, but also the soil itself. And there's increase of phosphorus and nitrogen in the soil as a result of this. Acidification of water, particularly in oceans, as a result of carbon dioxide, leads to fish being affected, and then they die. Coral gets affected. Coral protects fish from predators and also helps breeding. Atmospheric aerosols, such as the ones that use in asthma, are making climate change problems worse. Plastics and pesticides impact on humans and also animals, and they've got their own health impacts. The only positive, perhaps, is that the stratospheric ozone that's depleted by 2030 will be repaired because of decrease of CFCs. So what are greenhouse gases? Well, greenhouse gases are actually important to keep the Earth warm, but instead of perhaps having just one blanket, the Earth is now having many more blankets. The radiant heat from the sun hits the Earth, is reflected back as infrared, and then can't go through the layer of greenhouse gases and is reflected back to create global warming. 3 main gases that we talk about are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide from agriculture, industry, and basically cars. There are others as well, which are very, very relevant because they're much more powerful even than methane, which is 40%, which is 40 times powerful than carbon dioxide. These are much more powerful than methane, but fortunately, they are in significantly low amounts and largely come from refrigeration systems. This pie chart just shows you what I've just talked to you about now. Most of the energy comes from usage of energy comes in from agriculture, transport, industry, and importantly from buildings. And 6% of greenhouse gases are produced just by cement. So what's the impact of all the bits that I've been talking about now on us? Well, first of all, it impacts on us, humans, through injuries during all the fires and the floods, etc., that we have encountered around the world and see every day on television. It impacts on us through heat stress, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit in a minute. Through air quality, talk to you about that in a minute. Water quality is affected seriously through cholera and other infections, and these infections, such as cholera, are endemic in many countries. And for cholera, it's 39 endemic countries it is present in. We've got salmonella, which causes horrible bowel disease and diarrhea, present in flood water. Here we've got mosquitoes, which are coming through into countries which didn't have it. For example, United States, causing dengue fever. And there are other social impacts, such as mental problems that children have as a result of separation, death in their parents, or even abuse during migration. So let's look at climate change, its impact on heat as a direct impact, and also impact on air pollution. And that indirect impacts actually are worse on children, the elderly, the vulnerable, and pregnant moms. So heat, direct heat, leads to all these symptoms that I've mentioned to you about. You can faint and perhaps get away with it. But a heat stroke is where your temperature cannot be decreased and it remains at 104 degrees, whereby all your organs fail and you die. And this is actually happening around the world in areas that it did not used to happen before. Air pollution, the important thing about air pollution is it's not only outside, but also inside homes, particularly around the world where they have cooking indoors. The most important thing about 2.5 micron particulate matter, which is in the air pollution concentrations, gets through into our central nervous system, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, liver, spleen, and also our reproductive system. So all our systems are affected by anything that's below 2.5 microns. This in pregnant mums results in prematurity, low birth weight, and deaths in babies. The children, more asthma, slower and stopped development in the lung. In other words, it arrests the development of lungs. In older people, they get strokes and lung cancer. In even much older people, you might get not only cancers, but diabetes and dementia. And diabetes is made worse not only by the fact that you've got insulin metabolism being affected by heat, but also the fact that there will be less activity leading to not only obesity, but poor control of diabetes. So the polluted air I'm talking about contains lead, arsenic, and also mercury. We measure it through air quality index. And in this index, there's sulfur dioxide, ozone. Ozone is a lower layer ozone, which is created by photooxidation of nitrous oxide and various other chemicals in the air, nitrous dioxide itself, and also the particulate matter 10 and particulate matter 2.5. Particulate matter 10 makes you ill, but does not get through into your blood system. PM 2.5 does. So at the moment, we have got an upper level of 35 micrograms per 100 per cubic meter, averaging in 24 hours. And we're hoping next year to have it to 25 micrograms per cubic meter, which is our target, which is being strengthened by the edict from WHO. So what can we do what can we do? Well, governments can do things, corporates can do this, individuals can do things. Just one example is that if we stopped fossil fuels, there'll be 3.6 million decreased deaths around the world just from this stoppage. So we can use reusable energy, we can change our habits and improve the efficiency of what we use in industry, etc. We talk about this subject to all and sundry. We decrease water wastage, and we do all sorts of personal things that we can do to try and improve the environment, including refusing, reducing, reusing, and recycling plastic. We can decrease flying, have alternative forms of transport, start growing trees, decrease the amount of clothes that we use, because the clothing industry leads to 15% of greenhouse gases. And a lot of water is used, 1.5 trillion liters per year is used. And switching to a vegetarian diet if possible, or decreasing the amount of meat we eat, because beef has got a huge carbon footprint. Just in China last year, there was reported to be 75,000 deaths as a result of methane produced by cows. If we decrease our food wastage, and food production takes up 15% of greenhouse gases, and 20% of what we produce globally is wasted, but most of it, which is 70% of the waste, occurs in our households. So there is a message for us to take. So if we did all this, it will not only improve our health, but also save money, and we have a future for our children. And all the bits that I mentioned here are impacts of positive impacts of our action on climate change. We at WhatsApp also have social prescribing, where we get people out to come and a canal clean with us. So, in summary, climate change in 10 words. It's real, it's us, scientists agree, it's catastrophic. But there is hope if we have clean, renewable energy and reforest our woodlands. But if we don't do all that, the ultimate threat is going to be that once the snow starts melting, the albedo effect, which is the heat being reflected away from the snow, is going to be lost, exposing the iced earth underneath. And that earth has got huge amount of hydrocarbons, and also some diseases, it is thought, such as smallpox. So that will certainly be an Armageddon for us. So is the future that we are looking at the moment what we want for our children? So I leave you with this thought, ladies and gentlemen, that it is their future we are fighting for. But whatever has happened so far, and whatever is happening with the volatile nature of what's going on around the world, and the ambiguous and inequitable world that we live in, we still have ink in the pen to change the ending. As Albert Einstein said, the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.